Hello, Chart Masters, friends, and family. Today is lesson 6. We're going to be going over lineage from Noah. We last left off on Lamech, and then which begot Noah. And we're going to go into detail on Noah, his life, and him building the ark, and his descendants. We'll go into a little detail and review some scriptures. But first, I want to thank God for giving us the opportunity to do this, because without him, this wouldn't be possible. And I do want to thank the creator of Chart Masters, which is Pastor Vance N. Dean. You can check out the link to the biography in the description. And we thank you. First off, we're going to go to Noah's line, his column. We're going to go to that now. Go to Noah. Okay, now we know that Noah was born the year 1056 BC, counting from Adam. The current year that we're looking at is 0 BC. So that is the first year, year 0 of creation. Time starts at 0. So we're going to go skip down 1056 years. Search 1056 BC. Okay, we know Noah is begotten here. The reason why, if you haven't watched any of the other lessons and you just jump to this lesson, we followed every descendant coming from Adam, where the Lord mentioned how long the person lived as well as the age that the person begot the descendant. And we've been counting that starting from Adam. We last left off on Lamech, which is the father of Noah, and he begot him at the age of 182. Okay? But we're going to start Genesis chapter 5, verse 28. We're going to read that, and then we're going to follow it down until some events occur. Genesis chapter 5, verse 28. We're going to go ahead there now, chapter 5, verse 28. It says, and Lamech lived 182 years and begot a son. 29 says, and he called his name Noah, saying, the same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. All right, so Noah is begotten. Lamech is 182 years old. Noah's life begins here. The year is 1056 BC. But we're going to follow it down until we know what the scripture references, which is Noah was 500 years old when he begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But we need to know what specific year that happened, because there's some dead ends. But the Lord does mention when Shem begot a son, and he mentions how long after a specific event. And we're going to go over that. But we want to look at Noah. We're going to go down. Let's see. The scriptures tell us he was 500. So we are at the year 5 of his life. So let's go down 495 years. Search 1556 BC. So here we are, 1556 BC, Noah's life, 500. All right, we're going to take a look at Genesis chapter 5, verse 32. It says, and Noah was 500 years old and begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now we're only going to reference the scriptures that we have here. I will give a few underlying verses, and we will read those verses to match up with what's taking place here. But we know we can figure out Shem, when he was begotten, and what year. We know that Noah was 600 years old when the floods were upon the earth, okay? But we know the Lord also told Noah to build an ark. So let's read some verses first. We're going to go to Genesis 14. It says, "Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof with lower. Second and third stories shalt thou make it. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die." Now, we want to know what year that took place, but we can only track what the Lord has given us with numbers and concrete paths that will lead to another descendant or another event that also has another set of numbers to follow, because you'll follow a dead end. A dead end is where you read a verse where it references when someone begot someone, but if there are no other follow-up verses that allow you to continue following the lineage in the scriptures, you're going to have a dead end, because it always has to tie back to the source, Adam, and then it has to come all the way down to Jesus, as well as all the way down to the present. But that's down the line. So the year is 500, and Noah it mentions he had 3 sons, but we know the Lord told Noah to work on the ark, right? So if it took place in the 600th year of his life, the flood, then we know he worked on that for 100 years, the ark. Now, but we want to take a look and just follow it down. So Noah builds ark. This is the year 1557, and he is 501 years old. So we're just gonna scroll down and scroll down until we get to 600. Okay, Noah is 600 years old, and this is the year of the flood. So his age is up here. We're going to read Genesis chapter 7, verse 6. We haven't forgot about Shem, because if you read the stories, it doesn't mention the specific ages of Japheth or Ham when they begot someone and how old they were at what specific event. So we can't trace them, but thankfully the Lord gave us just enough information where we can still follow it. So we're going to read Genesis chapter 7, verse 6. Okay, Genesis chapter 7, verse 6 tells us that, "And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth." All right. So Noah, the ark is built. We're in the 600th year of Noah's life is when the floods came upon the earth. Let's read verse 7. "And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives went with him into the ark because of the waters of the flood." Okay, so we're going to read, it says 8. We're just going to take it all the way down to, we can just read, we're just going to read it down to 24. We might as well just, it's not going to hurt us. "And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him into the ark because of the waters of the flood, of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. There went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And the selfsame day entered Noah, and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lift above the earth. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all the flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beasts, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Okay, I know we read a lot, but let's keep in mind where we're at. Noah was 600 years old when the fountains of the deep were broken up. Now, the year is 1656. Keep in mind, Noah was born, or he was begotten on the year 1056 BC. Also 1056 years from creation. We know that because we followed the lineage down from Adam. And then when we got to Lamech, we said Lamech was 182 years old. And the year so happened to be 1056 BC. 500 years later, Noah had 3 sons, but not on that specific year. And we'll look at Shem in a second. We want to fast forward 100 years, but we know that Noah worked on the ark during the time that the Lord commanded him. And in the 600th year of Noah's life, he did as the Lord commanded, got in the ark, and floods came on the earth. So now we're at the year 1656. And if we read, we know that the floods were on the earth at least a year and some months, but we'll read the specific verses. And then we'll know how many years after the flood Shem had a son, and then we can figure out his exact age. And then we can do the comparison with the year. So this is a pivoting moment in history. The flood of Noah occurred 1656 BC. Which is 1,656 years from creation. We have a concrete date. That is the year that the flood occurred, according to the lineage and the mathematics of the Word of God. Okay? The year 1656 BC. Also, the year 2348 BC until Jesus' birth. So we're counting down until his birth with the second number. So it's 2,344 years until Christ is born. Remember, Jesus Christ was born on the year 4 BC. The 4 starts all the way at the top, 4004. And then the other number on the left-hand side starts at 0. The number on the left-hand side is counting away from Adam, so the years are increasing. The number on the right-hand side is counting down to Christ being born. So these years are, this number is decreasing. So the further we get down in history from Adam, the number on the left is increasing. The number on the right is decreasing. The number on the left represents the years counting down from Adam being created. The number on the right represents the years counting down to the birth of Christ. So we're going to go down, ground dry. Okay, we're going to read Genesis chapter 9, verse 13, as well as some other verses. Genesis chapter 9, verse 13. It says, I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of covenant between me and the earth. So the Lord made a covenant with Noah, okay? And then at 15 we see it says, and I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the water shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. So that's the covenant that he made with Noah. But we want to go back. So we're going to reference some verses in Genesis chapter 8 so we can know when the ground was dry. It's 1 year after Noah being 600, so that'll put us at the year 601 of his life, okay? But let's read the verses. It says this, and it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. So in the 601st year, that's in Noah's life, he was 600 when the floods came upon the earth. 601st year, the ground is dry. Okay. Now, when they actually left the ark, we can read 14 and we can read 16. But we know that the Lord told Noah to leave the ark in that 601st year. And if you want to get the specifics on the details, on the months and the day of the months, you can read the whole chapter, and then you can look at the verses and total up how many months from when the ark rested to when the ground was dry, and you can figure out specifically how many years, exactly how many months it was till the flood was over. But we want to know the year is 1657. That's 1 year after Noah being 600 years old. Okay? Now we want to look at Noah's life, 602. We want to look at Genesis chapter 9, verse 28. We haven't forgot about his descendants as well, which is going to continue on, and it's going to carry us into Abraham, etc. But we're going to just stop at Shem after we go over the map. But we want to always follow the descendant down to their life being over, okay? So we're going to go to verse 28, and it says, and Noah lived after the flood 350 years. So, okay, the flood, after the flood, 350 years. So that'll be 350, plus 600. That'll put us at 950. So 29 says, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Okay? So, he lived 950 years. So we can go up to when he was 600, okay? All right? And his age up here, all right? Now, if he's 600 in the year 1656, that's the year that the flood occurred, and he lived 350 years from this point, or put us at what? 2006. Okay, so let's go to search 2006 BC. Okay, so Noah's death, Genesis chapter 9, verse 29, age 950. The year is 2006 BC. That's counting from Adam, and also 1998 BC until Jesus' birth. That's counting down until his birth, and it's exactly 1,994 years. Remember, the 4 is carried all the way through from the beginning of God creating the heavens and the earth all the way until Christ's birth. We can go over that in more detail in another video, but I do mention that in lesson 1 and 2. But we want to look at his life is over. So you can know concretely, following God's math and reference in the scriptures, but it brings more revelation if you read the whole story and you can map the numbers together and follow what God left. So we can say that Noah was born the year 1056 BC. The flood was upon the earth the year 1656 BC. And we know that he died the year 2006 BC. Powerful stuff. He also lived a total of 31.20 generations. Remember, one generation is equivalent to 30 years. 30 times 31, that's going to give you 930. And then you add the 20, which is going to give you 950. That's just the way that the generations formatting will follow the math and make everything equivalent with no remainder. We can go over the generations in detail on how that is broken down, but we're going to go over to the next person, because Noah did have 3 sons, but the only son that it mentions how old they were at a specific event or when a specific event occurred was Shem. If we're going to look at the reference verses, okay, it tells us that Shem had a son 2 years after the flood. So we know that the flood occurred the year 1656, okay? But when the dry ground happened was 1657. But let's go back up. We're going to go to 1656 BC. 1656 BC. Okay, this is the year of the flood that we went over. We're going to go 1 year down. Noah is 601 years old. The ground is dry. 2 years after the flood, we're going to go down 2 years. 1, 2. Noah will be 603 years old. We're going to look at the reference verse. Shem is 100 years old and begot Arphaxad here. So Shem is 100 years old and begot Arphaxad here. The reason why we know that is because we did the cross reference with math. Okay? If we're going to look at a reference verse to know, we're going to look at Genesis chapter 11, verse 10. And says, these are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. The flood occurred the year 1656 BC, which we went over, okay? We'll go up 1656 BC. 2 years after the flood, so we know the dry ground was the 1657 BC. Now we're going to go down 2 years after the flood. Noah would be 603 years old. We're going to go over one column to the right. So we're going to click the right button down here to navigate over one column. And then we're going to see that Shem is 100 years old. But we were counting Shem from the beginning, from knowing the reference point. So now we can know, if we go back 100 years, how old Noah was when he begot Shem. So we're just going to go back 100 years. So if we subtract 100 from 1659, that'll put us at 1559. So let's go to 1559. 1559 BC. Shem begotten here. So now we did some math, some reference verses, and now we know Shem was born the year 1559 BC. But keep in mind, we're following these descendants from the start of their life all the way to the end of their life. And we're only using the reference verses and reference anointed descendants that the Lord gave us numbers for, that we can follow all the way to the end with no dead ends. So we're going to go down to the year that Shem begot Arphaxad, which is 100 years from this point. So we know that Noah was 503 years old when he begot Shem. So now we can know that Shem was born the year 1559 BC. Also the year 2445 BC until Jesus' birth. Now, remember, the 4 is always carried on the number on the right. So it's really 2,441 years until Jesus Christ is born. So we're going to go down to the year 1659 because we know that's when Shem begot Arphaxad. 1659 BC. So we're going to look at Shem is 100 years old. Arphaxad is begotten here. The year is 1659 BC from Adam. 2345 BC until Jesus' birth. Shem begot Arphaxad in the 3.10th generation of his life. 3 times 30 is 90. 90 plus 10 is 100. And that's another format of equivalent to all the numbers that you see here. They all do tie back in. So we're going to go over one column to the right. I'm going to click this arrow over here, one column to the right. And then Arphaxad is begotten. We're going to stop here. What we want to keep in mind, what we learned today. Search. Go to Noah. So, we learned that when you follow reference verses that contain all of the key information on a specific person's life, and you follow it all the way down from the beginning when God spoke about something to the end, and you put the numbers and you match them up with the scriptures, as well as you put the things in the order that the Lord stated that they occurred, you can piece together some events. So we covered the flood, we covered Noah, and we covered Shem today. Recap, we know that the flood occurred in the year 1656 BC from Adam, or 1,656 years from creation. We also know that Noah was born the year 1056 BC from Adam, or 1056 years from creation. We also know that the flood was over in the year 1657 BC from Adam, or 1657 years from creation. One thing we didn't mention is the most important thing was his generations, 55.06, okay? And what I mean by that is 55.06 generations from the creation of the heavens and the earth. 55 times 30 plus 6 will give you 1,656. We also did recap on Shem's life. That's the individual we know that begot Arphaxad at the age of 100. But the Lord tells us that, he told us that, hey, Arphaxad was born 2 years after the flood. We did the math. We saw that the year was 1659, because that'll put us 2 years after the flood. And then we can know that Noah was 503 years old when he begot Shem, because if we go back 100 years from the year 2 years after the flood, we can therefore deduce and find out, following numbers, when he was exactly begotten. That was the lesson for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. We also always want to give an honor to God. We want to thank him for giving us this opportunity. Without him, this would not be possible. We also want to thank the creator, Pastor Vance N. Dean, for creating this. He's the creator of Chart Masters. Without the parties that I mentioned, this wouldn't be possible. And again, the link to the biography of Chart Masters is in the description. Thank you. I'm signing out.